Penn State men's basketball loses to Wisconsin in overtime, 79-74. And time to break it all down, see where the Nittany Lions go from here, plus get some impressions from Penn State football's media day on a live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And yes, welcome into a live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm your host, as always, Zach Seyko, and joining me on this show is Adam Sheetz, special guest, Penn State men's basketball insider. Adam, welcome into the inaugural live episode of Locked On Nittany Lions. I appreciate it.
Glad to be on the inaugural episode. I wish it was for better reasons, but I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more by visiting FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. That is FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And Adam, we'll be talking Penn State men's basketball in these first couple of segments here, and then just get your thoughts really briefly on Penn State football's media day. James Franklin, Marques Hagans spoke to the media, plus select football players as well. I thought there were some interesting tidbits from there, so we'll save the best for last year because it's clearly not Penn State men's basketball as they lose again. I thought it was interesting that they were a 5-point favorite to begin with. And now I kind of had them as a pick 'em, leaning that, yes, I sat here with you and said that I think Penn State wins this game. I really do. But apparently they didn't play inspired enough. I thought Micah Shrewsbury would let a fire under them, and he doesn't. And the same things that just kind of continue to plague Penn State over and over in these situations. Now 11-2 at home. They suffered their second home loss. They're 5-8 in conference, 14-10 overall. And while I'm glad that the Big Ten Network raved about how Wisconsin padded its resume for the NCAA tournament, getting some more quad wins. And here's Penn State now kind of really actually Big Ten assumed that Penn State was going to be ahead of them based on their projections. But now they've fallen behind at this point. And I don't know. I know what Penn State can do. They can win out to make the NCAA tournament. But sitting here, that's so much easier said than done at this point. I really think they're a lost cause.
Yeah, there's a lot that needs to go right for this team to even have a shot right now to make the NCAA tournament. That loss is tough because of the way it happened. It feels like Penn State did a lot of things right. It's like they had that fourth guy for the first time in Cameron Winter who played really well for a stretch. Yeah. Miles Dredd gave him good minutes when he got in the second half. So it was weird. Like the things we said they have to figure out offensively, they figured out. The problem was the defense was still an issue for this team. That's going to keep Micah Shrewsbury up tonight, I'm sure, because, you know, when you look at it, Wisconsin is one of the worst offensive teams in the Big Ten. They don't score a lot of points. They come to Penn State, and in overtime, they score 79. In regulation, it's 68. They did really whatever they wanted offensively. Chucky Hepburn had a really good game. Connor Esijan played really well. Obviously, Tyler Wall had a really good game inside. That wasn't going to be surprising. And Stephen Crow, he got in foul trouble, but was effective when he was in the game. It's just, that's going to be the problem for this team. It's like everything went right offensively, but the defense is an issue. And this is something Micah Shrewsbury, that's his calling card. He wants this team's calling card to be defense. And that continues to be the problem, especially with the Nebraska loss and now this loss at home against Wisconsin.
I mean, Wisconsin, when a Wisconsin team can come into your home arena and score, I know, granted, it had overtime, but 79 points out of the Badgers. And you just, I don't know. You had now both teams had 4 scorers in double digits, right? So I was going to, say, oh, well, Wisconsin had 4 guys in double figures. Well, so did Penn State. But the difference was obviously that their big name players ended up scoring more in those double figures than Penn State did. Penn State also got into some of its own foul trouble. Jalen Pickett fouled out at the end. Seth Lundy was pretty close. When your top 2 guys really have to step back on defense. And Cam Winter had 10, but at the same time, this is a pretty rough stretch for him as Big Ten Network made it very apparent that Penn State, Cam Winter, he couldn't find the bucket the past few games, and that his 8 points to start were already outscoring his total over the past 4 games. So that's pretty telling there. But yeah, the story here is the defense. I'm just at a loss with the way backdoor cuts, guys are getting open. Wisconsin very good with its passing, and I don't know if that's just Wisconsin has good vision, floor recognition, or it's just Penn State just kind of being lackadaisical on the defensive end, and they're just a step or two behind when it comes to good ball movement.
Now, Wisconsin is a very good passing team. Like, I'll give them that. They're a really smart team. They have a lot of veterans at key positions. Their bigs pass the ball really well. Tyler Wall's a great passer for his size. But, this is a problem. I mean, I'll take you behind the door a little bit. We had media on Monday, and then we went to practice for 15 minutes. They were working backdoor cuts. They wanted to try to figure this out, and they worked it a lot. And Coach Shrewsbury, I've never seen him that fired up at a media or at a practice this season when the media has been available to go to practice. He was very motivated. He was upset, I'm sure, as a lot of people were in that locker room with the way they played at Nebraska. They were trying to get those things right, and they were working that. And I think it just hasn't really translated. And the problem is it's not the freshmen that it's really been the problem. The freshmen are having their issues, but you have seniors making these mistakes. Veterans, you expect that this is something you tell them to do something, they're going to do it, and they're going to do it right. They're having these problems, and it's tough for Coach Shrewsbury to figure out. They're the oldest team in the country, and they just keep making these defensive lapses. There were a couple times where you watch the game and they'd get it to 3 and get it to 2 in the second half. You're like, oh, they're making a run, and then a defensive lapse right after, and Wisconsin hits a 3 or gets a layup, and then they extend that lead back, and they kept having to play from behind. They finally got there, were able to force overtime. They took the lead 62-59 at one point, but again, just not being able to consistently get the stops they needed against a Wisconsin team, as we said, that's not a juggernaut offensively.
No, they're not, but they have assets that are just going to, give headaches to the Nittany Lions, right? Crowell, it just felt too easy for him. 5 for 5 from the field. What pains me, and this is, you can see this on Ken Palm, if you look at the advanced statistics, Penn State is just one of the worst teams when it comes to second chance points. Like, you can't fling all of these 3-pointers and then that's it. It's part of the, because they say, oh, well, Penn State, they opened up, they had the couple of 3-pointers that they made, and then they missed their next 6 or 7, I think it was. And I'm saying, well, okay, they can miss them. 3-pointers are not the most efficient shots. Like, they're pretty difficult to make when a good defender's in your face. But the problem is that's it. It feels like Penn State is automatically conceding a possession the second they fling that 3 and it doesn't go in. So Penn State's either got to shoot 50% or better from the field, or they just have no legitimate shot against decent competition.
Yeah, because they shot the ball really well tonight. Their percentages looked really good, and that's going to be something you look at. And the problem is, from at least the last 2 games especially, the only guy who's offensive rebounding is Kebajai. He's the only guy in there battling for offensive rebounds. I'm sure the coaching staff has told him, if you want to play on this team, you're going to have to do that. And he's answered and done that. But I think the one play you can point at and talk about the offensive rebounds is Cam Winter's 3 at the end of the game. I mean, Cam struggled from deep, and he gets a really good look at it, and it doesn't go. There's no one there to even have an opportunity. I think Jalen Pickett and Seth Lundy were down there, but they weren't in position to get a rebound or fighting to get in position to get that rebound. So they're not a team that's crashing the offensive glass. As you said, with threes, there's going to be long rebounds. There's opportunities for these offensive rebound opportunities, and they're not getting them. That's a problem for Coach Shrewsbury. They've got to figure that out. And like I said, it's frustrating because you're right there in a game. Both teams are on the bubble. Both teams were motivated. We talked about Coach Shrewsbury was going to light a fire under his team. I mean, Wisconsin got swept by Northwestern this season for the first time in like 27 years. So I'm sure Greg Gard had his team very motivated. Both these teams needed this game. And I think it comes down to one team has some veterans who's been to the NCAA tournament who know how to win these games, and one team doesn't. And that's how they're able to win it.
And I bring up the offensive rebounds. They actually did better than Wisconsin, but it just, I don't know. Wisconsin felt like they had no issue getting the basket. Adam, let's continue this conversation in a moment here as let's pay some thanks to our sponsor, and that is FanDuel, sponsoring this episode. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sports book in America, and that is FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that is even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no sweat first bet. Adam, this is really great. You'll get up to $3,000 back. I'm not kidding you. $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. So FanDuel lets you bet on everything from money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown in this game. Personally, I like the Eagles -1.5. I do. I like them to win this Super Bowl. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is also safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. It is a live edition, the inaugural live episode of Locked On Nittany Lions. You'll be able to catch this later up on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, this is up on YouTube as we speak. Adam Sheetz, special guest, Penn State men's basketball insider. And we'll get to football in just a second. We'll save that for our last segment. Talk about media day, something football in the news, because men's basketball is just letting me down. We do have a comment here from Joseph. I know it's not really realistic at this point, but what's the most realistic path we have to the tourney? I threw my hands up in the air at the beginning of the show, Joseph, and I said, good question. It's winning out, but that's easier said than done. They really have no other choice at this point other than to go on a run, win the Big Ten tournament. That's not going to happen, but it is okay. Like, look, if we're actually laying out what they need to do, they could lose maybe one or two more games. And that's about it. And then they got to go on a run in the Big Ten tournament, and then winning the tournament locks you into an automatic bid. You don't have to vie for an at-large. But Adam, I guess realistically, we were talking about, getting a few more quad one wins, winning all the games that you're expected to, and then maybe push to the semifinal. But now it gets a little even harder at this point.
Yeah, I think it's one or two losses left. I think it's almost now. I don't like to say must win in the regular season because you do get more games. So they're going to have to win almost on Saturday when they go to Maryland. That's their best opportunity to get a
Maryland's
huge win.
Really good.
And Maryland's really good, especially in College Park. They're coming off a tough loss to Michigan State. So, they're going to be very motivated. They went out there, got down 15-0 and came all the way back and lost at the end. Kind of similar to the way Penn State did today, just didn't have enough left to get the job done. So, they're going to be very good. You almost have to win that game. You definitely have to beat Illinois at home, get that season sweep. You have to find a way, definitely beat Minnesota. You're going to get Rutgers at home. You're going to go to Ohio State. You're going to go to Northwestern. You're going to get Maryland back at home. There's a lot of wins. There's only, like you said, probably one or two games that they can really lose and say, oh, they're still on the right side in the bubble, in the conversation. They're going to have to win games in the Big Ten tournament. And the problem right now is they're the 11th seed in the Big Ten tournament, which means they're
playing an extra round.
They're playing day one. So they're going to have to play an extra day, which is not easy, especially for a Penn State team that's trying to figure out their depth. So it's going to be tough for this team. They're going to have to, like we said, there's probably one or two losses left that they could realistically have and still be in the conversation. So they just got to make sure that they handle business, take it one game at a time if you're in that locker room, and hopefully, if you're a Penn State fan sitting here right now, that they find their way to get on the right side of the bubble.
So they're at Maryland this weekend. A pretty quick turnaround. Normally they have a few days in between games, but they're only gonna get a couple days here. Then they have Illinois, who they beat. They're at Minnesota. That's a road game. Normally I'd give Penn State the advantage here. They're at Ohio State. Normally I'd give Penn State the advantage here, but they're on the road. Then they're at home against Rutgers later on in February. They're at Northwestern, and then they play again. They host Maryland on Senior Day. Really, this schedule looks, it's very difficult. I see them losing to Maryland. I would like to think they beat Illinois, but I guess that's just me being biased. If I'm trying to be as neutral as possible, I think Illinois gets revenge. I think Illinois, Penn State was really, you can't duplicate that performance you did out in Illinois. That's just too difficult. Minnesota, I think they win despite that being on the road. I think they lose to Ohio State. I think they lose to Rutgers. I think they lose to Northwestern. And then senior day, I would like to think that you win with all those guys that are veterans that are going to be moving on. But I don't know. That's still a toss up there. So, Adam, what do I give them here? I'm giving them about a 3-5 record.
Yeah, you're giving them 3-5, maybe 2-6, and sometimes. So I mean, it's not looking good because, like the weird thing, it's the Big Ten, so all the games are winnable and all the games are losable. So that's just the living in the Big Ten right now.
Yeah, I mean, the games that they should win, Maryland's a tough one, so that's obviously not doable here. They should beat Illinois. They should beat Minnesota. They should beat Ohio State because they're better than all those teams. Rutgers is tough, even though it's at home, but, hopefully the home court advantage will help out. Northwestern is much improved this year. I really like what the Wildcats have done, and that's a road game, so naturally I would say biased in me, Penn State wins, but no, Northwestern's actually a lot better. And then Maryland at home, you just kind of chalk it up to home court advantage. So if I'm being an optimist, Penn State goes 5-2 down the stretch. But if I'm being realistic, they're going 3-4 at best. Yeah, really. I think that's where they are. So, Adam, this just kind of crossed my mind because now that we've gotten more of an in-depth look down the stretch for the Nittany Lions, would they beat the team from last year?
I think they beat the team from last year. It's a good game because it's a weird game. I mean, you're talking about contrasting styles, and I don't think you really see this. You're talking about the same program under the same coach from year 1 to year 2 and how completely different they play. Like, it'd be crazy. I think they beat the team from last year. I think John Harrar makes it interesting, but John Harrar's not a guy that's going to go down low and give you 25 scoring. He'll get every single rebound in the game, I'll tell you that. But he's not a guy who's going to dominate offensively, so I think that might help this team, and they might just shoot their way into it. Like I said, it's a really weird game. I think they're a better team this year than they were last year, and I think Jalen Pickett's a better player this year than he was last year. I think Seth Lundy's a better player this year than he was last year. I think Andrew Funk gives them a lot more, and Cam Winter gives them a lot more than maybe some of the guys they were playing last year, like Sam Sessoms, who had to transfer out. I think, those are improvements there at those positions. So I do think this Penn State team's better and would beat that team from last season.
I'll say this would be close.
It would be close.
I agree with you because Jalen Pickett is a lot better. Seth Lundy, I thought he was going to need the COVID year. He can move on. Really, he's convinced me. He's become a much more all around player. If he does come back, he's doing it out of the kindness of his heart because he can make his way onto a pro team. I don't think he's going to get drafted. It's too tough when the NBA only has 2 rounds. So, Adam, let's pivot here. Adam Sheetz, special guest, Penn State men's basketball insider, but of course, you also carry some expertise in football, and I like to think that I do as well. So, Penn State had a media day. They finally let you talk to the freshmen who are now second-year players in the program, whether they redshirted or they're true sophomores. They don't give them kid gloves anymore. They let them speak with reporters, and it was good to see guys like Drew Allar, Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, Abdul Carter, basically all the guys that you didn't have access to. Now you do. James Franklin had a traditional press conference, and you had an introductory press conference from Marques Hagans. So there's a lot to unfold as far as everything that was said. Biggest thing that stood out to me, Adam, I think was the fact that the quarterback room, because that and the wide receivers, with Marques Hagans, but James Franklin said by nature, Drew Allar is quarterback number 1. But he said that Beau Pribula is going to make this a competition. So here we go again. Trace McSorley and Tommy Stevens, and then Tommy Stevens transferring out because he didn't want a quarterback competition with Sean Clifford and Will Levis, and then Will Levis transfers out. So now here you are with Drew Allar, who hasn't been named the starter, but he's the presumed starter because of the way the depth chart was last year. But Beau Pribula is making it a competition. And if you saw Mike Yurcich's Twitter page, he posted that Beau Pribula won the first day of winter workouts. So quarterback controversy, or am I just being too much of a sensationalist here?
I love Beau Pribula. I don't think you'll find a bigger Beau Pribula fan in the country than me. I love this kid. I think he's a great quarterback. but I don't think it's going to be a competition. I do think Drew Allar is going to really sit in as a starter. I think the great thing to hear about Beau Pribula and how hard he's working, he's making this competition, is maybe Penn State has better quarterback depth than we thought they had going into the season. I think that's the big thing fans should be taking away right now, that Beau Pribula, from what we're hearing, is he's pushing Drew Allar, which means he's obviously a guy that if Drew Allar, don't wish injuries on anyone, but if he would start and then go down, you have a guy you could turn to and you trust. I think that'd be the big thing to look forward to right now. I don't think it's a controversy. I think they're really grooming Drew Allar. I think Beau's going to work his tail off and make this as close as he can. But I think Drew Allar, just the natural talent, the size, his ability, I think he's definitely going to be the starter for this team come September 2nd when West Virginia comes to Beaver Stadium. But like I said, Beau Pribula is a great talent. I've heard a lot of great things about him. I think he could be a good quarterback at Penn State if he sticks it out and waits till Drew leaves and takes over when he's out. I mean, that's obviously a lot to ask from a guy who came in the same recruiting class, but he's working really hard, and I think he's definitely going to make this as close as he possibly can.
Yeah, and the timeline, Drew hypothetically starts the next 2 years, has a good career, can go into the NFL draft, be a first-round pick. That's the idea.
Yeah.
And then you have Beau Pribula, who now has that red shirt, who can back up and basically so be the second string quarterback and then wait his turn. And I think that Beau Pribula does have that capability. I do think that he can play somewhere else, but I'm glad that Penn State has him here. And yes, James Franklin did address that in his press conference because somebody asked the question, do you need to go back to the transfer portal and get essentially a depth piece? And he said, in a perfect world, you would like to. He said, however, I am confident in the talent alone in this quarterback room. So James Franklin, I think, is very honest when he wants to be. And that was an honest comment there. They also, they said that they're going to target the transfer portal again. I thought Marques Hagans didn't really say anything other than I like that he was personable. I like that he's a relationships kind of guy, because the vibe that I've got from talking to people, other reporters, is that Taylor Stubblefield just didn't have that great relationships with guys in the wide receiver room. And now you're getting kind of almost the 180 of that with someone who wants to be. He said, he's like, I want to be able to be a person that gets invited to these guys' weddings down the road. So Marques Hagans wants to be a coach first and a leader, but also down to earth as a friend. And I think that you're getting that now from him.
Yeah, and I think that's huge, because I think that's the position everyone keeps talking about with them keep attacking the transfer portal, is getting another veteran wide receiver. They got Dante Cephas. Obviously, they lost a guy to the portal going to West Virginia. So you want to bring another guy in. I think that'd be in a perfect world. And Marques Hagans getting here late makes that an ability of now in this late transfer portal, he's going to have a chance to recruit guys that maybe he was talking to when he was at Virginia. And they're like, maybe I don't want to go to Virginia just because it's not a big football school. And now he's at Penn State. You really liked Coach Hagans. So maybe you're thinking about it maybe a little more now. So there's going to be that opportunity. So I think he's a really good guy. For everything I've heard, a lot of people like him around the program. I liked what he said in his press conference. The wide receivers seem to like him in his early time here. Obviously, he just got here, but they really like him. So I think that's a huge thing, and I hope he's able to be successful here, because they've been missing out, as you said, when Coach Stubblefield, I thought he was a really good coach, developed some good wide receivers, but they missed out on some of these opportunities to maybe get some guys in the portal that maybe would have helped this team develop and continue to get better. So it's going to be interesting to see how they're able to bring guys in, because that's going to be huge here over the next month through winter and spring workouts, and then getting that late portal additions.
Well, once again, thanks for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. Check out the brand new show on the Locked On Podcast Network, and that is Locked On College Basketball. Everything you need to know about college basketball in one place. Plus, you get to hear from big-name experts, insiders, players, and coaches. That is Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Zach Seyko, your host, as always, of Locked On Nittany Lions. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Leave feedback, comments, any questions that you want to have. Thanks if you tuned in for the first live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, and I think more of these will be coming as I've been able to figure out the technical side of it. So this was nice. Adam, thanks for the time again, as always, and thanks for doing this live. I really appreciate it. No one else I'd want to do this alongside for the first live edition, and let the people know who are going to watch this on playback where they can keep up with your personal work as well.
At Sheetz Adam on Twitter, where you can find all the things you need about Penn State basketball and Penn State football as they continue to try to get things going. As Penn State continues to try to march either towards postseason in basketball or towards the blue-white game in April.
All right, Adam, thanks again as always. Appreciate it and can't wait for our next conversation. Hopefully it's an upset win over Maryland.
Yeah.
That'd be really nice.
Yeah, it'd be really nice if we're talking about them beating Maryland. Thanks, Zach. Always a pleasure.